Hi everybody, welcome to SEDE 7335. You've talked a little bit about your experiences with subliterature on the discussion board, so I want to spend a little time talking some more about subliterature and graphic novels and how you can use them in the classroom. So first off, when we talk about graphic novels, Scholastic defines graphic novel as what you see on the screen. Graphic novels are written and illustrated in the style of a comic book. That's a good basic definition. I like these extended definitions, and these references will be included for you at the end of the presentation. Turner and Spitall say, like novels, graphic novels have a beginning, middle, and end, as well as a main character that develops through conflicts and the story's climax. They go on to say the most significant difference from a comic is that the graphic novel's text is both written and visual, and every part of each frame plays a role in the interpretation of the text, and hence graphic novels actually demand sophisticated readers. So a lot of times we hear teachers and others saying that graphic novels are too easy for kids, but really they demand some advanced reading skills. So when we think about why we should use them, there's lots of reasons. Number one is motivation. Kids today are so visually oriented that they're motivated to read graphic novels. They're interested in them. Alverson comments that they reinforced the left to right sequence of reading, which is very important. She also says that the speed with which kids can read a graphic novel helps build their confidence, and that's especially important when we're talking about new readers or even second language learners. Alverson also says that the images in the graphic novel can scaffold word or sentence comprehension. So just like young children reading a picture book are supported by the images, the same is true with graphic novels. Some more reasons why we should use them. They can serve as a great supplement to the curriculum. So even though we're talking about novels in some cases, there are also lots of examples of graphic novels that aren't necessarily novels. March, volumes 1, 2, and 3, those are memoirs of the civil rights movement. Human Body Theater, that's a great graphic representation or graphic presentation of the different systems in the human body. So there's great ways to supplement the curriculum with them. For second language learners, the detailed images can help them decode and comprehend the text. So important. They are also a great way to model concise language usage for more advanced readers. Similar to poetry, in a graphic novel, you only have so many words that you can put in there. It's very different from a full-fledged novel. They can also support the comprehension of reluctant or below-level readers. So there's all kinds of reasons, sorry about that, all kinds of reasons why we should be using graphic novels in the classroom. So many more that they outweigh the reasons we shouldn't, that people might put out there. So when we talk about graphic novels, we want to make sure that we understand the different features. So first is panels or frames. Panels or frames, those are the blocks. I'm going to pull this image up on my document camera. These are the panels or frames in a graphic novel. They're generally outlined, but the panels or frames show the story's progression. If you want to make a comparison to regular prose text, they are analogous to the paragraphs. Okay, so you can kind of think of these panels or frames as paragraphs. The placement, the size, and the action are intentional, and they help move the story along. Okay, so when you see, like right here, here's a smaller panel, and then over here, that's a bigger panel. Think of that as a longer paragraph. Okay, you could really have kids do some advanced thinking about how do these compare to paragraphs in a regular text. Okay, so those are the panels or frames. Speech bubbles. So we all know that speech bubbles show dialogue, but they can also show thought. So the difference is if the speech bubble looks like a cloud, that indicates that it's a thought. Okay, but the styles of the speech bubble can convey meaning. So looking here, here we go. Here's some speech bubbles, like look right here. There's a speech bubble that's bigger. The font is also important there, but look over here. You have some that are bigger, some that are smaller. That could indicate louder talking versus quieter talking. So those speech bubbles and what's in them can convey meaning. That's really important. Kids seem to get that. They're used to this from different things that they read. It's sometimes the adults who have a harder time. Like here's another example of one. This is music. I must have had a wicked childhood, and it's a very detailed speech bubble there. It's not kind of a big round circle, right? So those can convey meaning. Another feature, narrative boxes. So narrative boxes kind of serve as the narrator that we would normally have in a novel. Narrative boxes could denote some setting information, or it could indicate a shift in the timeline. They could summarize one or two panels, and sometimes the lettering can create mood, or it could help with phrasing and intonation. So I'm going to show you some narrative boxes here. Here's a couple of examples. Most of us seem to have problems with moderation, but junk food shouldn't be written off entirely. As someone who was taught from birth to appreciate the pleasure of eating, I find it discriminatory to dismiss a type of food simply because it's considered unhealthy and cheap. After all, some of the finest gourmet foods are terribly unhealthy. So you see how these narrative boxes function, and not all panels or frames are going to have narrative boxes, but you see them quite often. Gutters. This is my favorite feature of a graphic novel. Gutters are the white space between the panels. Okay, there's always white space between the panels, and those are known as gutters. Those are really important. Sometimes we think of that as just dead space, but it's not dead space at all. Those gutters convey meaning. There's generally something that happens in the gutter. So something that happens here, and then there's a different scene here. Change has happened in the gutter. So it's really good to get your kids to talk about what happened between here and here. What happened in the gutter, so to speak, because that conveys meaning. That's really high-level inferring right there. So that's one of the reasons why graphic novels are so beneficial in the classroom, because kids are having to make huge inferences there. All right, so make sure that you share this terminology with your kids. Some other features. The sequencing moves from left to right and top to bottom. That's true in most graphic novels. Now, if you're reading manga, that's different. Manga are different from graphic novels. It's still presented graphically, but the sequencing is different. Also, the artwork is integral. The graphics and the text work together to convey meaning. Okay, so readers really need to pay attention to the images. So when we think about what we can teach with graphic novels, well, we can teach all kinds of reading skills. One of them that we can teach is monitoring comprehension. So I'm going to show you, it says on the slide, I'm going to show you under the graphic novel, but I'm going to show you a page from this graphic novel, Relish, on the next slide. I'm going to read it and kind of think aloud what I'm doing as I read, and I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing to monitor my comprehension. So here's the page. I'm going to look at it on my actual book so I can see it better, but you guys have it right there on the slide. So I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing as I read it aloud. When my mother took me at 7 years old to live in the beautiful countryside of upstate New York, I was unamused. Look at the deer, sweetie. We could see it in a zoo. Huh. So I'm looking at the kid's face right here, and I'm thinking she's not too impressed about seeing the deer. As far as she's concerned, you could see that in a zoo. Let me switch to the document camera. This might be easier. No, I think this is better. Manhattan child as I was, I could not imagine a world that wasn't divided into blocks and boroughs. Why didn't you go outside? Why? This is Archie she's reading. Again, her face. That tells a lot about how she's feeling. She's not interested in going outside because I'm guessing in New York, she's used to staying inside a lot. My mother took it upon herself to acclimate while I sulkily mourned my former proximity to FAO Schwartz. Isn't it gorgeous? I'm going to plant a garden over here, I guess, and do a chicken coop here. Do we have to? The kid is not excited at all about this, but the mom, wow, she looks like she's really in her element. We'd moved to the country when my parents divorced, so my mom, determined to forge a life of independence and nature, dragged me along on the Little House on the Prairie fantasy. Little House on the Prairie. So I remember from my own childhood, that's a book about a family that it's during westward expansion. They moved to the prairie. So maybe she has that TV show or that series of books stuck in her head. She planned a magnificent vegetable garden, and we trooped all over the Hudson Valley to countless seed and plant stores. This reminds me of a little market that I visited in Houston where they have all kinds of seeds and spices. And it's funny, I see kids there sometimes looking this same way, not very excited to be there. I can't imagine a more incredibly boring place for a kid than those garden stores, reeking of fertilizer and potting soil, and never without a scowling, child-hating clerk. That would be the scowling, child-hating clerk. So I want you to think about, what did you notice me doing to monitor my comprehension? What kinds of things did I do as I was reading? That's what kids can do with graphic novels. What else you can teach with graphic novels? Read, stop, and think. This is something we ask students to do often when they're reading traditional texts. Read a little, stop for a minute, think about what you just read. Graphic novels are perfect for this. They make it way more explicit for kids because really they have to stop and think at the end of each of the gutters. They got to think about what just happened. So if you'll look again at Relish, you'll see how we stop and think in the gutters. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to go to this page. I'm going to continue reading on this page. It says, during one of these yawn-inducing outings, my mother was taking a particularly long time over garden gloves when I reached my limit. I'm going to stop. There's a gutter. So I'm thinking, look at her. It looks like she's quivering with anger, those motions right there. And all of a sudden here, she's out on the street. So I'm thinking she must have gotten so irritated that she stomped out, and it says, furious, I stormed out of the store, crossed the parking lot to the dirt road, and with great force and determination flung my hand into the air, screaming, taxi! I'm guessing nobody shows up because she's out in the country. Probably no taxis out there. So you see, those gutters make it really easy. That's a good reminder for kids. When you get to a gutter, stop and think about what you just read. So try it at home with a graphic novel of your own and think about what skill this is helping students with. You can also use graphic novels to support vocabulary learning. The pictures support inferences about word meaning. Students can use those words to create their own personal word banks. So as you're reading the graphic novels that you have at home, be thinking about that. Inference. We've talked a little bit about inference. Great way to use graphic novels. Use it to teach inference because the inference load in graphic novels is huge. Something else to think about. So many of these graphic novelists and so many authors today of books for kids are easily accessible on social media. I've included here for you on this slide some well-known graphic novelists that you can get in touch with on Twitter. Jean Luen Yang, he's the current ambassador for young people's literature for the Library of Congress, author of American-Born Chinese, Boxers and Saints, Secret Coders. Raina Telgemeier is the author of Smile. There's her Twitter handle. Jenny Holm writes the Baby Mouse series and others. Victoria Jameson is the author of the graphic novel Roller Girl, which won the 2017 Texas Bluebonnet Award. R.L. Stein, the Goosebumps graphic novels. Cece Bell is the author of El Defo. That's on your reading list. Great authors to get in touch with on Twitter. Here are some of the resources that I included for this presentation. So enjoy reading your graphic novels and start using them in the classroom. Thanks.